Rehmann's webinar, Unlock the Secret to Public Sector Staffing. My name is Rena Saltzman, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Our webinar qualifies for 1 hour of continuing professional education, or CPE. In order to receive CPE credit for attending today's program, you'll need to respond to at least 4 out of 5 separate questions that will be provided during this webinar. All polling responses received during the presentation will be kept private. Participants requesting CPE credit will receive a certificate via email within 7 to 10 days. Today's program is being recorded and will be placed on Rehmann's website within 24 hours. All registrants will also receive a copy of the slide deck and the webinar recording via email. If we're unable to answer any of your questions during today's program, we'll be sure to follow up with you via email. Additionally, after today's program, questions will be sent. You can send your questions to the presenter via email at publicsector@rehmann.com. Once again, that's publicsector@rehmann.com. So we're going to stand by for a moment while we're going to begin the recording process. All right, now I'm going to take a moment to introduce to you all our wonderful speaker. Our speaker today is Corrine Connolly. Corrine is people-focused. She provides leadership, management, and strategic input on broad HR initiatives that cultivate positive work cultures that are also results-driven. Corrine helps to ensure that Rehmann's valued clients have operational controls, administrative and reporting procedures, and people systems in place to effectively meet the business needs for a wide range of industries. Her passion for fostering strong employee relations and aligning corporate strategies positions Rehmann's clients for success. Corrine is also a part of Rehmann's public sector work group, sharing her public sector knowledge with other Rehmann associates. Corrine, we're so excited to have you today. Are you ready to begin?
I am. Thank you, Rena. Thank you, Rena, for that introduction. I'll get this started here. Let's see. Oh, here we go. As it starts. All right. Again, thank you, Rena, for that introduction. I'm really excited to be here today and to share this next hour with you. In this session, we're going to be exploring ways that the public sector organizations can attract and retain employees. As public sector continues to face new challenges and opportunities, it's becoming increasingly important to find the skilled and engaged workforces that will help drive our innovation and deliver high quality services. But there are a lot of different recruiting strategies out there and engagement techniques. So to choose from, and it's difficult to know where to start. That's why this webinar will share some of the latest research and the best practices in public sector recruiting and employee engagement. Whether you're a hiring manager looking to attract top talent or an HR professional seeking new ways to motivate and engage your staff, you'll find valuable insight and action tips in this session. So let's get started. Today's discussion, we will focus on looking first at the state of today's workforce, the challenges facing our public sector, ways to enhance recruiting efforts, and then of course, how do we retain the talent that we already have? We'll begin by taking a look at the current state. Right now, we have 10.4 million job openings and only 6 million job seekers. When we talk about the job seekers, we're really only talking about those who are unemployed, which means there's 2 jobs for every job seeker. No wonder we can't find the people to fill our positions, right? The days of having rooms of police or firefighters lined up for testing or loads of people applying for our positions are gone. They looked for opportunities because they didn't come up very often, and they were looking for a career that would launch their careers. Those days are gone. We have plenty of job opportunities and just not enough people to fill them. So to add to this equation, of those that are still employed, 50% are looking at job postings. 20% are actively being recruited, and we'll talk about active recruiting in a little while. 28% would quit their job without even having another one. And at least 40% are likely to leave within the next 3 to 4 months. Many of us referred to this as the Great Resignation. We had lost a lot of people who made significant changes in their lives. They did it for shifting of priorities, their values, their work-life balance, but the impact's real. The vacancies are unfilled and the work hasn't stopped. What this data tells us is that it's expected to continue. All was not lost though. This big number here, 75% and 69%, these are the great numbers. 75% of our turnover is actually preventable. So while there's a lot of things going on in this upper region of people looking at job postings and potentially looking to leave an organization, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to. In fact, 69% of those looking to leave would consider staying if things changed. That's a lot of opportunity that we still have. So we don't want that opportunity to slip by. So stay tuned. We'll be talking about how we're going to target many of those a little bit later in today's presentation. But before we dive in, let's talk about some of the challenges that are facing our public sector. Both from a recruiting and retaining standpoint, there are many challenges that we face that maybe the private sector wouldn't. We know that our funding levels are restricted. We can't go out and make more revenue and build more cars or deliver anything that brings in additional resources. We have limited resources, and of those resources that are limited, there are restrictions placed on those resources. So they're not always available for all of the types of things that we might be able to do in the private sector. There is intense competition for talent that is both public and private, and there's a lot of opportunities out there for candidates. That is real, both public and private sector. The nature of the work that we do in the public sector is not always conducive to having flexibility in the environment. It isn't always open for the work-life balance or the hybrid approach to remote or hybrid. So we face those challenges. And the other thing that we see is we're behind the times, and we'll talk about technology. We know that when the pandemic hit, we were in a position where we faced a time when we weren't as prepared as maybe our private sector were as it relates to technology. Technology has such a great opportunity to advance us, has opportunities to streamline our processes and make the lives of those that are performing the jobs much easier. And we'll see how that can help us in recruiting employees down the line. The other one is the political environment and public perception. Those are real. We know they exist. And so we'll touch on those a little bit later when we come to some of the sections that they are most in line with. But let's explore several effective recruiting strategies that public sector organizations can use to overcome these challenges. By identifying the unique challenges faced by the industry and adopting targeted recruiting tactics, public sector organizations can attract talent. New candidates in today's day and age, branding your organization, and then we're going to talk about that employee engagement portion of this and how we're going to retain those that are in our organization. Government recruiting has often been antiquated processes. In most cases, our applicant tracking systems followed behind a financial system that was put into place, our payroll system, which allowed us to pay our employees, and then all of the other systems that are put in place and our cybersecurities that have gone in line. And that applicant tracking system was often just a module that was interfacing with our payroll. The advances that they have made in applicant tracking systems today that can integrate with a wide range of payroll applications and financial systems has vastly improved. They provide interactive tracking of candidates. So as a candidate applies for a job, you're able to see where they are in that process. If they stop the application, why? It gives us an opportunity to reach out to candidates, to have an interaction with them that we wouldn't otherwise have. It allows us to integrate our applicants into an onboarding system and then pull them through into your payroll systems, which can be a much more efficient way than some of the other processes that we might have been using. We can leverage the state-of-the-art technology to help streamline that hiring process, to make it more efficient and for us more able to attract those candidates. And when it's streamlined, we'll find that we have more time to do active recruiting. Creating a registration database allows us to know that these are people who are applying for our jobs. And so if they apply for your job and they can stay within a database, then when they may not have fit for the job they applied for, but you have a database of employees or candidates that could be potential employees that might fit for a different job down the line. Having a system that will allow that integration is a great way to go. Creating a mobile-friendly application process. We know that the average American spends 7 hours and 50 minutes a day with an electronic device, whether it be a tablet, a laptop, a telephone, almost 8 hours a day. And that telephone is usually the primary communication that people have at any given point in time, right? So making sure that your applications and that process are mobile friendly are important. Can they stand in line and look at your job postings? Can they apply for your job online and through their phone? Is it easy or is it more complicated? When we talk about the processes and how to improve those later, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Ensure that you have communication options. How we communicate to candidates today is very different than how we used to communicate to them. They want instant feedback. They want to know where they are in the system. And the most important thing is they have options. So if we're not talking to them and we're not communicating to them in a way that works for them, we're losing candidates. And then electronic in employee onboarding experiences. We'll talk about that a little bit later. When you talk about the full cycle of an employee coming on board, it's important to have that electronic system in place, both for the hiring staff, but also for the employee. One of the things that does is it sends a message to applicants who are applying that we aren't behind the times. We have technology in place. It's the first thing that they're seeing as an introduction to your organization. Let's make sure it's a great opportunity for them to see what you actually have and can showcase. And most of our applicant tracking systems or onboarding systems can be customized for you, customized for who you're trying to attract. Very customizable and certainly can make all the difference in the world when you are trying to attract talent. We're up to our first polling question. And the question is, have you implemented a new applicant tracking system in the past 3 years? Have you even evaluated what your capabilities of your system are? In some cases, people haven't even evaluated the depth of what they can do with an existing system. Systems are extremely powerful. And there are a lot of options within those systems that can really make the process so much more efficient. Making sure that you're attaching to job boards and that you're reaching the targeted market that you want. Having the right system certainly helps do that. Next item that we talk about is building a pipeline of younger candidates. Due to the accelerated retirement and the aging out of our baby boomers from the workforce, it's important to start targeting to creating an environment that has a younger population. And I say younger only because of this fact, right? The millennials, that generation that was born between 1981 and 1990, are projected to make up 75% of the global workforce by 2025. It's 2 years from now. So if we're not targeting that group of people who are going to make up 75% of it, we're missing a great opportunity. Increase your responsiveness to applicants, right? Having text-enabled comprehensive experiences are important. We used to apply by paper. We'd do a paper application and we'd wait for a telephone call and someone would maybe call us. Then we got onto online applications where we waited patiently and waited patiently and waited patiently for a reject letter, because that at least let us know we were active out there somewhere. We hadn't just fallen off. And then we got into the point where we are today. Today's technology allows us to communicate in a lot of different ways. And what we're finding is, yes, people have email, but do they read it? Does your email go into their junk file? And some emails do, depending on what their extensions are, they can end up in someone's junk mail. So you don't get the response from the candidates even after they've applied. Having a texting enabled opportunity allows us to text people. Telephones, they block who they don't know, right? We have the ability to change and set our settings so that if we don't know who you are, we're just going to assume you're spam and we aren't going to take the calls. When you ask them up front in the process how they like to be communicated to, we get the opportunity to engage that and to speak with them in a way that works best for them. And texting tends to be the preferred method. Most often, you will get a greater response by texting applicants, which seems very impersonal, but it does work in this environment. We know that that remote work and hybrid options may or may not be most advantageous in the public sector, but we learned that we could do things differently than we ever had. The pandemic gave us that opportunity to really look at how we could do things differently. And when we came back in a post-pandemic-ish environment, how did we incorporate those opportunities that became viable options? And are those still options? Are you advertising your jobs with those opportunities incorporated in them? Provide growth plans and development, even in your postings. I'll touch on that in a minute. But the thing about this, the group that we're talking about, the younger generation, they're looking for opportunities. Do you have training programs, a mentorship opportunity? How about the ability to work on a high profile project? The beauty of the public sector is we connect so closely with our customers, to our residents, to our school children, to our communities. And we have a way to help this generation do something extremely meaningful. Connect them to the mission. We know that they want an opportunity to serve communities and make a positive impact, whether it's working for a government, a nonprofit, public sector, a public school. We provide them a sense of purpose and fulfillment of contributing something to something greater. That's something that we have the ability to leverage, and the private sector doesn't have that same opportunity. So we really do have some great opportunities to really connect people to purposeful and meaningful contributions, and where they can see their progress so quickly. As we look at focusing on diversity, we know in public sector, we strive to have a diverse workforce that's reflective of those we serve in your schools, in your cities, your townships, or in your counties. We're front and center. Public sector organizations have a responsibility to serve diverse populations, and recruiting a diverse workforce only helps us achieve that goal. Community organizations, partnering with them, because we're on the ground, we're in the communities. Community organizations can be such a great way to develop partnerships. It helps to build trust in the community. It helps to expand the knowledge base of those that are in those organizations to what we do and how we do it. For example, nonprofit organizations, there are those that serve specific demographic groups, women, minority, people with unique abilities. Local business associations or workforce development programs or educational institutions are all great ways to connect with a source of opportunity to talk about your jobs and to let people know about your agency so that they know that you're there and the possibilities exist. There's a lot of ways that we can do that. There are job fairs, there are celebrations, our communities celebrate all kinds of things, opportunities to have our information out there and let them know that you are looking to hire people. The other thing that's really important when you look at preparing your job postings or having the conversations out in the community is to use inclusive language. We've changed that. Over the years, we look at our job descriptions. We'll talk about what we need to have in those job descriptions. But when you're writing your postings and you're looking at attracting candidates, make sure that we're not using gendered pronouns. Use neutral language like they or them. Expand some of your descriptions in looking at being inclusive to different cultures or backgrounds. Use the words like multilingual. or diverse experience. Let them know that's what we're looking for, right? In your posting. So if you, that really gives you an opportunity to look at a different candidate pool, one that could be very diverse. We know there's so many added benefits by being able to engage with local community organizations. We know that diversity brings about creativity and innovation and better decision making, having different perspectives on potential outcomes. It improves customer relations, and the diverse team can better understand and relate to the diverse customer base that are served by the public sector. It's important to keep all of those into consideration. There's a lot that can be gained, certainly by focusing on diversity. Updating your recruiting practices. Wow, we can do a lot in this area. We start with the job description, right? Evaluating your job description and updating it. We talked about how to put language in more appropriate language and more open language in your job descriptions or your job postings. It's important when you do a job description to really reevaluate what your requirements are for the position. We reached a point in our society where there were fewer jobs and more people applying. So how did we screen that out when we had so many applicants and not enough positions? We started to elevate our requirements. Where a bachelor's was great. You graduated from college, a bachelor's was going to be what you needed. And then it was a master's, and then it was a second master's. And then there were degreed professionals with licensures, and we don't change any of that. Those we can't really adjust because those are the way that the jobs are required to be performed. But where those are not the case, reevaluate them and determine, do you really meeting the needs of what you need in those positions because of a degree or because of a particular requirement? For instance, driving. As an administrative position, does an employee actually need to drive? You could be eliminating legitimate candidates who can show up for work even if they don't have a driver's license. You could have somebody who is here, who wasn't born in the United States, that has no desire or intent to ever drive, but we've left them out because they need a driver's license. Today's generation is quite happy to use Uber and not have driver's license. You will see kids that we would wait to go and get our driver's license when we turn 16. They have Uber. They don't have to do that anymore. So there is a lot of opportunity to evaluate what you're asking for. One of the other things to consider is, can you be creative when you look at what you're asking for as the requirements? Is it an opportunity to develop somebody and grow them within your organization? You can start by looking at an aptitude test or a test for a fit to your positions. You design them so that they emulate what you're looking for in the position. And then when you test the candidates against it, you find where their strengths and their weaknesses are and where they will most likely be in need of help to be successful in a position, or if they're just not a good fit at all. So there's ways to evaluate candidates on different items than you might have done previously. When you go and look at job postings, be clear and detailed and engaging. Engaging is a key word throughout this whole webinar today. Engaging, engaging, engaging. Postings can make or break. That's the first make or break you, right? It's the first introduction to who you are and what you have to offer. If I gave you job posting A for city X, Y, and Z, it might say I'm seeking an experienced administrative assistant to provide support to the department's management team. It's a great job, but I could probably do an administrative assistant's job. But if I spun it just a little bit different, would I attract more people? Would you be more inclined to apply for a position that sounded like this? This is an exciting opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of individuals in our community. By connecting people with the resources and the programs they need to succeed, you'll play a vital role in creating a more vibrant and prosperous community for everyone. As an administrative assistant who picks up the phone and puts the person on the end of the phone in communication with the people and the services that they need, we absolutely do that. Can we be more excited about the jobs that we're posting if we can be just a little bit more excited about how we present them? That posting can really set the tone of what an employee can expect coming in. Active versus passive recruiting. The days of being able to just post and wait are gone. When we know that we have 2 jobs for every 1 person who's seeking it, we need to look for ways to be actively recruiting. If you have to pay for paid advertisements or paid postings, those are always a great way. It elevates them. It gets a little bit more traction for some positions. But actively going out and using sources in order to find people with qualifications that you're looking for is a viable option and one that we have to look at. Enlist your employees. How many of you have referral bonuses? We know that employees who are excited about their work or what they do often talk about it when they're outside of work. If you provide a referral bonus, you have an opportunity to engage those employees in helping you find people that they would like to work with, but more importantly, that might fit within your organization. They're a great voice for helping to recruit outside the organization. And then focus on that entire employee experience. Recruiting, we think of a lot of different things. When are we recruiting? As public sector, we tend to be a little bit behind. We don't always get the luxury to recruit from the standpoint of knowing when people are leaving and when they're going to retire. The succession planning is not always ideal in public sector. So think about offering incentives that would allow you to gain information that would help position you to be able to recruit and attract people before somebody leaves. Consider an incentive for an employee who communicates about their retirement and their intended date to retire. And by providing that incentive, you ask them to tell you early in the process of when they would be retiring, right? It gives us more time and more opportunity to figure out how we're going to transition as that person leaves the organization. Job boards, we talked a little bit about. Website postings. This one is pretty important. Make sure that your website postings that you are looking, if I'm looking for a job, that I can click on your website and find it. If I have to go and find out what department it's in, is it in human resources? Is it under a civil service commission? And I have to keep digging, you're going to lose applicants. They want it fast, quick, and in a hurry. We know that. And so if we make it easy for them and we invite them into our website and they see it front and center, we have jobs open and available, and we make that inviting for them, right? So many options with websites that you can certainly engage them as they come into the organization or are looking for opportunities. The length of time that it takes to apply for a job. Wow. I don't know if any of you have gone out and actually applied for a job on your own sites. It's an enlightening experience, but I encourage you to do it. Some of you, I have reached out to your websites and tried to apply for jobs. I can tell you, they say, some of them will even tell me it's taking 25 to 30 minutes to apply for a job. Do we need all that information right up front as someone applies for a job? Not always. Can we do a 2-step process? Can you get enough information to find out that they are that they possess the qualifications that you need, and do a second step that says, thank you for applying, you're advancing to the next step, here's what we would like. You've engaged them, they know they're moving, they know you're in the process. Gives them a great opportunity to then apply and provide more information in that process. So how long do you wait when you get an application before you respond to it? Again, we aren't waiting for a whole pool of candidates to come. Is it your hiring manager who happens to be reaching out to people? Is it your HR professional? The faster you respond to an application, the more likely you are to engage them because they have options. So if you're the first one and you're continuing to communicate, you have an advantage over somebody who's waiting for the closing date. Being open to open postings rather than having a finite date of the posting can also be a way to keep those processes moving along in a more expedited fashion. And then in the employee experience, it's their first interaction. Make sure it's a great one. Our second polling question is, oops, sorry. Well, I think, can you still bring up the, oh, there we go. The polling question. Are you actively recruiting for open positions or wanting applicants or waiting for applicants to apply? And it could be a combination of both, right? There are some that you have to go out and actively recruit for. Other ones you may be able to wait for them to come in. But having said that, We talk about the employee experience, and the employee experience really is an all-inclusive. It's the speed at which we respond to candidates. It's who responds to candidates. It's the message that is sent to the candidate. The first person to speak to them will leave that lasting impression. If it's a manager or a hiring manager who may not be as engaging or excited or leave that first great impression, help give them the skill set to be able to do that. We want to leave them with the hope of wanting more from who we are. And that first communication can be so important. When you communicate with them, communicate with purpose and passion and energy. Make onboarding memorable, right? When they come in, if you have an electronic onboarding system, they have seen the use of technology. But now we get to the people facing. We're going to learn about the organization. We're going to learn about what other departments there might be. How many of you actually have your city manager, your mayor, your CEO, your board of directors actually meet your employees? Or do you take them to a board meeting to meet them? Introducing them is that first step in connecting them. So once we've hired them, we know that they're ours. Now, what are we going to show them in our organization that will help us engage them and keep them here? Introducing them to the CEO or having your hiring managers or your department heads interact with those that are being hired into the organization is exposure to those in leadership, but it also says that they're important, right? You're important to me. Connect them with a mentor or a buddy, somebody that they can talk to and ask crazy questions that they might not want to ask HR or might not want to ask the boss in the first couple of weeks, but give them somebody that they can automatically connect with. Having that personal connection is really important in developing those relationships. Ensure that they have the tools that they need and provide feedback. Everybody wants feedback. And allow the opportunity to listen to their feedback. And as HR professionals, for those of you who are on here that are HR professionals, use a 30, 60, and 90-day approach, not just from a manager who is doing an evaluation to see if they're going to make it through their probationary period, but those 30, 60, and 90 days help us gain valuable information on what our processes look like, where we might be able to improve them, where we might be able to help a candidate who just needed something that we weren't aware of. Making sure that they have the IT, their technology when they leave your onboarding, making sure that they know how to do their timesheet. Those basics are so important to them. But really giving them an employee experience, make it fun. It really can be fun. And there's lots of ways that you can do that, but make them really remember their onboarding process and how it was their first day and where they started their journey. Branding for the public sector. We talked about the fact we have challenges just by the fact that public perception becomes our reality. We don't always in the public sector get the opportunity to control the message, unlike the private sector who can put a campaign on, spend a lot in marketing and advertising, and tell you all the things that they want to know. We don't always get that opportunity. There are some times that the narrative is already being started, and we know that Google is a great thing. So if we Google an organization, we're going to find out all kinds of things about an organization. Public sector just challenged for the fact that there's a lot of information. It's public, it's available. We learn a lot about what's going on, but we don't do ourselves a great service in promoting ourselves, whether it be a school district, a city, a village, a county. We tend to be behind on that. And we have such a great story to tell. We can connect people with what we do, tell them how they can be a part of a great thing. We don't often use as much social media as the private sector does. So using social media, being where people are, right? Whether you're on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, any of those venues have an opportunity to be seen by a group of people that are probably not seeing it otherwise. We can reach out to the ones that we want to connect with in a way that we want to connect with them, but it gets our story out there. Highlight your employees. If you have successes where employees have started in the organization and they have promoted to management, or they have been in part of a great project, or they have finished something that is really just a great story, tell it. Don't just tell it to a city council or to the township board or to the school board for that matter. Tell it to the public. Let them see it. It also allows feedback to your employees and recognition for a job well done, which we're going to talk about in engagement is so valuable. Highlight your successes. We don't always do a good job of saying, pat on the back. We did a great job. Do it. Nobody else is going to tell that story. So make sure you find a way to do that. Connect your organization's vision and mission, and make sure that that those outside of your internal organization know what that means. And then showcase your wow. Every one of us has something special about our organization. Tell us what it is. Show us what it is. I've talked a lot about these items. These are all the buckets that we've talked about. One we haven't talked about, which is compensation and benefit review. That used to be our leverage. In a public sector, we had such an advantage because we had great benefits. So the pay wasn't quite as good. The benefits were great. People were looking for public sector as a career. They were going to get a job. They were going to stay for 30 years. They were going to have a defined benefit when they got done, and life was perfect. That's not our reality today. We know that applicants and people in the workforce today are not looking to stay 30 years. In fact, if you can get someone to stay 2 to 3, 3 to 5 years, that's a great hire. And so we have to think in terms of what might be beneficial to them when we look at compensation, when we look at those benefits. So while we might not be able to be as competitive as private sector in compensation, we can make sure we're competitive with our neighbors. And when we do that, the thing we have to remember is if you're comparing yourself to others that have not done compensation studies, all you're doing is comparing your data to somebody else's data, which may not still be good data. And you have to take into consideration the market. We now find that private sector is providing public sector duties. So there's data available that can tie us to industry information, not just the information that we see that's public and we can get from our neighboring communities or school districts or counties for that matter, or different agencies. So there's a lot of information that can be used, and it's important to leverage that. So we're on this one. There you go. When was the last time you did a compensation study? We've seen a rise in compensation studies, so we know that's popular out there. And you'll be getting, you'll see a lot of that happening. The thing is I know that that's always on the bottom when an HR director or an HR professional gets a survey request, it's one more thing to add to their plate. But it's one thing that will help with the whole industry, right? If someone is increasing their wages because it is more in line with where we ought to be in the market, we have a great opportunity to leverage that information ourselves, right? So helping one another in this process, we're all in the boat again. Nobody is, there's a lot going on for us all to need candidates. Employee engagement, we're going to shift here for the next bit of this, this webinar and have some conversations about engagement, because this really is going to help you with that big number we saw, 75% earlier, right? As we move into away from the recruiting strategies and we focus on this most powerful strategy of retaining employees, it's not about money, it's not about vacation time, it's about engaging. And I could do a whole series. In fact, one of my teammates could do an entire series on employee engagement. But today during this seminar, we're going to just focus on one area that you will get the best bang for your buck. And that largest influence comes in our leaders. When we look at engagement, you want to have an understanding. It is not a characteristic. We're not born with it. So it is defined as a state of mind where an employee feels passionate about what they do, is committed to the organization for what they do, for which they do it, and that they will put in discretionary effort into their day. That's a big contribution, discretionary effort. We'd all like somebody like that. Gallup gives us 3 different categories of engagement. First is the engaged. They're passionate, they're connected, they're high performers. We all know somebody in our office that looks like that. We have the not engaged. Gallup might call them quiet quitters. We might call them retired in place. And then we add the actively disengaged, those that have the negative attitude and have the opportunity to negatively influence what is happening with our engaged employees, whether they're engaged, not engaged. Those actively disengaged tend to be the ones that really can make the most, can do the most damage in the organization. So as you look at your organization, and this is based when Gallup speaks based on the average organization, if you were to think about your organization for a minute, what percentage of people do you think are engaged? Who are those superstars, the ones that are engaged and willing to take on the next project and are excited when they get new opportunities? Think about that for a minute. Well, Gallup says 32% of our employees are actually engaged, with 52% that are not engaged, and sadly, 16% that are unengaged. But what this really says is that there are 70%, almost 70% of our employees are not engaged. That's a lot of people that we have an opportunity to influence. And we know that the biggest contributor is our managers. Our ability to successfully navigate the challenges and attract and retain the best talent lies with the managers. Absolutely. 70% of the managers' actions account for 70% of an employee engagement. And employees say that 59% would be likely be more engaged if their managers were. So we know at the top, if they're stressed, if they're not provided the tools that they need to do their jobs, they are put into a position where they're put into a position to influence employee engagement right out of the gate from their mental state, their well-being, and where they are. So let's talk about where they are. They have a lot on their plates. We have remote workers, we have mental health, their personal mental health, we have regulations and funding and declining engagement and burnout. And let's add the bureaucracy that can exist in the public sector, an environment where the potential to change leadership happens every 2 to 4 years. There's an election cycle. We get new board members, we get new trustees, we get new city council members, we get new county commissioners. We get an influx of people that have new ideas, new expectations, new communication styles, and what they want to do, right? They all have an idea. So add that to our plate for our managers. They face, and in fact, we know that employees also face greater levels of bureaucracy and political influence. That leads to a frustration and disengagement in the public sector. So we have a little bit more to overcome sometimes, but that struggle is real, and it can take the toll on our employees. So what does that look like in numbers? 34% of our managers are engaged. 70% would take a pay cut now for a job that paid less, that would support their mental wellness. That should be concerning for us. They would take a pay cut, something that would impact their families, their lifestyles, to be in a better mental wellness state. What can we do to influence that? Why? We're going to talk about that. We don't prepare them. Our managers are struggling as it is, but when we put managers in there, the two numbers are going to come up that are really important. We promote people because we think they've done a great job. We also know that they may not always be great leaders. In fact, only 10% of our managers are natural born ability to lead. 10%, that leaves 90% opportunity for us to teach, and we don't. In fact, we show that many people didn't have the training that they needed. And in fact, this number, 57% had no formal or informal training at all. We have placed them in a position where they can make a difference in the organization, and we haven't given them the tools that they need to do the job. We need to work on a development program when we think about hiring managers or promoting employees. Let's invest in them and help them start with success. We're going to talk a little bit about hiring managers, helping managers in these 5 areas: clarifying expectations, providing feedback. Everybody needs that. Communicate, create development and growth paths for them, and also focus on employee well-being. We know that that was one of those things that they would really be willing to take a pay cut for. So we're going to take the next question, which is, when was your last employee engagement survey? Or have you ever done one? We know that whether or not you are private sector or public sector, the one thing that holds true with managers is they have the highest influence on employee engagement, but we haven't done a great job for preparing them. We really haven't. So let's talk about how we can help them in the future. These are real things that we can do today. If we take a look at it, we can clarify expectations. Let's find out what they think. 43% of the managers believe that they have actively helped someone set their priorities. But the employees say it's only 22% of them agree that they continually help them to clarify those priorities. That's concerning. When we look at clarifying expectations, we have a great opportunity to be able to help our managers, right? There are a lot of things that you can do here that you can take away and implement that will help clarify expectations, understanding what the top leadership wants, making sure that it flows down from the top leadership to the next level, all the way to the lowest levels in the organization, because they all make us work. In public sector, it doesn't matter whether you are the janitor, the bus driver, the school teacher, the superintendent. Our school districts don't work without any of them. Every single one of those employees is important to be able to provide an environment where our children can learn and grow, where it is safe and engaging and providing an opportunity for our future generations to excel. It takes all of them. Help them connect with that. Be consistent in applying policies. This will probably be your manager's most beneficial approach to anything. Make sure that we have policies and procedures that are in place, and make sure that they're consistently applied. Align managers and leaderships with their expectations, especially of the elected officials that might be on board. Make sure that there is a connection between the top leadership and the employees who are actually executing the work. It makes for a much more enjoyable work environment, and it opens our door for some great opportunities coming up next. Positive feedback. Everybody wants to know they're doing a great job, right? Who wouldn't? But let's talk about feedback. 60% of managers believe that they do a good job recognizing the work of their workers. The employees don't necessarily agree, with only 34% agreeing with that statement. 17% of the managers strongly agree that they receive the recognition for the work that they do. So we've saddled these leaders. We have put them in positions that we have not properly prepared them for, and they don't feel that they have been given the positive feedback in the positions that they're doing. And they have an opportunity to influence 70% of the employees that we have. Those are big numbers and big opportunities for us. The one I like the best, though, is this 4. Employees are 4 times as likely to be engaged if they strongly agree that the right amount of recognition for work that they do. How many of you know how your employees want to be recognized? Do they like public recognition? Do they like a handwritten note? How about a certificate? Is it a gift card? Find out. Meet them. Understand what feedback looks like to them, and how you might be able to be involved in that, right? Here's some great guidelines. Providing information, resources, training, communicating and recognizing. There are so many opportunities that we have. Employees want meaningful conversations. They want to know that you care about them. They need the training to do their jobs. Give them those opportunities. And if you have managers who are not great at communicating or giving feedback, you can provide training on that. We can provide training on how you actually connect with your employees and how you provide positive feedback in order to engage them, and make sure that it's meaningful. Just doing it for the sake of checking one of these boxes doesn't make it meaningful. Recognize them amongst their peers. If you have an all hands meeting, take the opportunity to recognize employees in those meetings. It goes a long way for them being recognized. The beauty of it is you're highlighting the exact work and the productivity that you want to see, right? We're going to highlight the things that we want to see, and other people see what it is we want to see and how they got recognized. And be consistent in recognizing individual members, right? Communication, this is our next one. It is so important. The single most valuable tool we have, and the one that can make or break a project. It can calm a parent, a resident, a customer. It can advance or destroy something so easily. Communication is number one. And here's where we're going to see communication. 7% of the US workforce agree communication is accurate, timely, and open. What that says to me is there's 93% of the US workers that find communication is not accurate, timely, or open. That's a huge opportunity to influence this part of the organization. Employees who have at least one meaningful conversation per week with their manager are 4 times more likely to be engaged. So let's talk. We have ideas on ways you can help in the communication and doing your daily check-ins with employees. Do you say hello every day? Do you require your managers to do one-on-one meetings? Do you have different ways of communicating? Are we in person? Are we virtual? Do we go out and have coffee? Increase the transparency. If people ask questions and they don't have the answers to them, let them know that. But always follow back and let them know when you do have the information, right? Working in an environment that is not transparent does not help foster the engaged environment that you're looking to create. Set communication expectations for everyone. Not everyone is a great communicator. They may not know where to start. Provide templates and training and opportunities for them to learn how to be better communicators. It doesn't come naturally. And remember that communication is a two-way street, right? Communication is both speaking and listening. And both are so valuable and important to our employees, to our managers. When we talked about the youthful, attracting a younger population, creating career and growth opportunities, it was important, right? The money and time that we invest in that education and that development will yield returns long after they have been administered, right? By giving employees and managers the tools that they need, can position the organization to succeed, to be more engaged, to be able to retain the talent, and really to grow within the organization, but more importantly, to position our next generation of leaders to be successful. We can learn from all of these numbers that we saw today on how we can do things better in the future. So employee development numbers, let's talk about this. These are actually more aligned than some of the other numbers that we've actually seen. So what percentage of managers agree that they invest in their employees' development? 37%. The employees said 25%. That's probably one of the closest ones we've had so far. 17% of the workforce say that their manager has made an investment in them. 17. That's not a lot. Especially when we have such an opportunity to engage them. And we know that with the generation that we're looking to attract, that's going to take 75% of our workforce will be those millennial group from 80 to 90, to 90s. We have an opportunity to give them in the public sector a place to grow and learn and excel in ways that they never knew. So we look at employee development, educate managers on the opportunities that do exist. Have career paths mapped out when you actually put your job descriptions together. Figure out what that career path is for anybody. Take the time to develop it and share it and communicate it. Have opportunities for employees to talk about what they want to do and where they might want to go in an organization. Help them understand that there is a career path and what they might need to be able to do. If you have an opportunity where there's a vacancy, or you have an opportunity where someone can shadow employees in other positions, take advantage of it. Let them create a mentorship where they can be excited and engaged about the time you're investing in them. You won't go wrong when you invest in your employees. Training is certainly never something that will go out of style. It can advance you in ways that you might not expect. Do you offer a well-defined leadership training program for employees in your organization? Some people do, many do not. And have you measured it? Have you measured how successful that training is for your leadership? We deliver training all types of training, and we deliver it and we go along thinking that they got exactly what they needed out of it, and that isn't always the case. Focus on the employee's well-being. We saw before how important this is. This one's going to be big. Ready? 60%. That's the big number on the screen. 60% of the employees said that their job is the biggest factor influencing their mental health. We can understand. We talked about the amount that we place on our managers and the fact that we haven't positioned them to be successful and given them the tools that they need to be able to do their jobs. 71% of the workers say work negatively impacts their home life. So not only is 60% of it influencing their mental health, even at work, but also in their home life. 69% of the workers say that their manager has a big impact on their mental health. Of course it does. If we have a manager that's not engaging, we have a manager that doesn't communicate, we have a manager that doesn't provide any positive feedback, it's pretty hard to see that this number would go anywhere. So making those individual contributions are so important. Workers say that they experience daily worry. We know that. They say that the stress daily, we know that there are influences well beyond what we see in the work area, right? People, we say leave it at the door. We do. We ask people, but that's not real. At the end of the day, we know that they spend more hours, waking hours sometimes with us in our environment than they do at home with their families. And so if they're taking an unengaged environment, maybe they're one of those actively disengaged, or maybe they're an engaged person that's been partnered with an actively disengaged individual who is influencing their well-being at work. What are we doing to help them? What are we doing to make sure that they are caring for themselves so that they can be an asset to their employees, but to us as an agency, right? What can we do? Burnout employees are 2 times more likely to be actively seeking jobs. So if it wasn't bad enough, the picture we painted before, where there was a 2-to-1 ratio almost of seekers to jobs, and we knew that 50% of them were looking at advertisements. Now we've got 2.6 times more likely to look at those advertisements. We know that engaging them means that they'd be staying here, looking more so. Inherently, people don't like change. And what we do find is when people change jobs, 40% of the time, those decisions were not the ones they should have made. So what do we do for their well-being? We obviously have lots of opportunities. Focus on employee engagement items that we said 1 through 4, right? We talk about communication. We talk about setting expectations. We talked about feedback, providing that feedback and focus to them. All of those things come into place and providing them the training and leadership training that they need to be able to do their jobs. In leadership, it seems like we've almost given them the keys to the car to lead, but we forgot to give them the driver's ed training to be able to get there. And so we really don't have a vehicle that is going to lead the organization in a way that we need it to. Take the opportunity to evaluate and to measure where you might be. And if you haven't measured employee engagement, what a great opportunity. It's an opportunity to listen to what's going on in the organization. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but this well-being part is so important to employees. We need to foster an environment where we care. Make it a fun environment. Who doesn't want to have fun? Find opportunities for them to meet and engage with employees outside of work or outside of the projects or the issues that they might be working on. Give them a sense of community. Create opportunities for them to work in teams that they might not have otherwise done. Change it up a little bit. People like to see that. But show that you care about your workers. It doesn't take a lot of money. Take some creativity. We have some great agencies that do that. I work with some fantastic organizations that do a really good job of connecting with their employees and making sure that they feel valued and heard and understood. They create fun experiences, and it doesn't have to be in person, it can be virtual. We see a lot of virtual opportunities to engage with our employees, and it doesn't have to be just a presentation. It can be opportunities for new people to present in a forum that they haven't done before. They can engage with employees, really focus on the well-being of our workforce. And that's from your leaders all the way to your frontline staff. We know in today's society, this is probably one of the biggest things facing us. It is Mental Health Awareness Month this month. We know that. But there's a lot that can go on, a lot that can be done with our help. We talked about the employee engagement surveys. If you haven't embraced an employee engagement survey, it's an opportunity to learn a lot. But if you take that road to ask for their opinions, you have to be willing to do something with what you learn. That will only foster a negative environment if you have asked them for input and then failed to act on it. As leaders, it's difficult to hear of the information sometimes. If we don't ask, we don't know. If we do know, we should act. And so find a way to engage with employees. If you're not ready to take on that employee engagement survey, or if you've done one before and you haven't acted on it, think about how you can take steps in order to engage your workforce. We've given you tips here today that we think will be helpful for you. If you haven't done a compensation study, think about compensation study, leadership training and mentorship. We talked about how important that is. And technology. Wow, what a gift it can be in a world where we have limited staff and limited resources. Finding ways to do things better and more efficiently helps everyone. Streamlining your hiring processes means that you have people that are freed up to do other things. They're freed up to be able to maybe plan some of those fun activities that we want to see employees engaged in. They have time to do active recruiting. They have time to be able to maybe make those first phone calls because they're the face of the organization that you'd want to see. And when there's recruiting, remember that sometimes we don't structure our organizations to have a recruiter on staff. And that's not unusual in public sector, at least in smaller communities or organizations. And so you're typically having somebody who already has other job duties also taking on that recruiting effort. Do they have the skills that they need to be able to do it? And when there is a unique position, whether it be a city manager or a CEO or an administrator, a high-level administrative position, sometimes it's easier to have those done outside the organization. Similar to what private sector does. Private sector will enlist and engage resources to be able to help them recruit. And those opportunities exist. Public sector just hasn't always taken advantage of that opportunity. The success of our organization really is dependent on the quality of the employees and the recruitment efforts that we make to retain them, right? By implementing the strategies and best practices that we've discussed today, you can build a strong and effective workforce that will help you achieve the goals that serve your organization. I want to thank you all for joining us today to discuss the public sector recruiting and retaining strategies. We hope that you found this webinar informative and thought-provoking. As we conclude, we at Rehmann want to thank each of you for what you do every day. We know your jobs aren't easy. By adopting innovative and effective strategies, such as investing in employee training and development and promoting diversity and inclusion and leveraging technology to streamline your operations, we can attract and retain the best and the brightest to serve our organizations. We encourage you to continue the conversations and put these ideas into action in your own organizations. Together, we can build a strong and more effective public sector workforce that is better equipped to tackle the challenges of the future. Thank you again for joining us today, and I wish you the best in your recruiting and retention efforts. Know that we are a resource to you should you ever need us, and we wish you the very best.
Well, thank you, Corrine. That was extremely insightful and a lot of information packed into 1 hour. This concludes today's program, and we really thank you for joining us. And with respect of your time, we'll be reaching out to you directly if you had any questions. And also as a reminder, if you'd like to learn more about anything that was discussed here today, you can visit our website at Rehmann.com, or you can also email us at publicsector@Rehmann.com. Thank you once again, and have a great rest of your day.